living fully alive in every way. You're listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol.
Hello again, friends, and welcome to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol. So glad that you join me here each week where we talk about living fully alive in some dimension. Let me ask you something. What did you have for breakfast this morning? Now, maybe you didn't have breakfast at all. Maybe you had some sugary cereal. Maybe you had something a little healthier, some oatmeal. Those of you that are really paying attention to protein and things like that, maybe you had an omelet. Well, our food makes an enormous difference in our well-being. Now, you know that intellectually, but regarding the specific aspects of our diet that impact us in specific ways, many of us don't pay nearly as much attention to that as we can and should. As a physician, I got very little training in nutrition, but I have a special guest to share with you today that is going to help change all of that. Dr. Elizabeth Boham is both a registered dietitian and a functional medicine, family medicine specialist. And I am so excited to talk with her today about food and using food as medicine. Dr. Boham is board certified in family medicine from the Albany Medical School. She specializes in functional and integrative medicine. She's also a registered dietitian with training at Columbia University. Since 2007, she has been working with Dr. Mark Hyman at the Ultra Wellness Center in Lenox, Massachusetts. This kind of specialty that Dr. Boham focuses on allows her to spend so much more time addressing all areas of a person's well-being and looking at the lifestyle, the nutrition, and all the other aspects that go into how well we do. It's not just diagnosing an illness and giving a prescription. It's looking at the whole picture. And I think this is going to be a fascinating discussion. Now, this conversation we actually recorded on video, and that video is available to members of our Fully Alive group online community. But this is such a helpful and practical conversation about how food impacts our well-being that I'm going to bring you the whole conversation with Dr. Elizabeth Boham. We talked about how food impacts risk of cancer. Dr. Boham herself is a breast cancer survivor. We talked about how food impacts inflammation in all areas of the body, and even how it impacts things like depression and dementia and others. So without waiting any longer, here is my full conversation with Dr. Elizabeth Boham, and I know you'll enjoy. Well, Dr. Elizabeth Boham, it is such a pleasure and an honor to be with you today, and thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Carol. It's so great to be with you and to be with all of your listeners as well.
You have some things to offer that I never learned in medical school, and I am really excited to talk about this today, the whole idea of food as medicine. Our culture has made some advances in certain areas of food safety, but there's so much in our current whatever you want to call it, Western diet, contemporary diet, or whatever, that really isn't doing us well. I think most of us, most Americans, realize that food has some role to play in our chronic illnesses, our longevity, and our well-being, and all of that. But let's just start, maybe, if you could give us a snapshot of how big an issue you really think food is, especially for the health issues that are so common today in our culture.
Absolutely. I mean, food is amazing. And I think that food and our nutrition impacts all aspects of our health and all aspects of medicine and illness. And so we can make a huge impact on what we choose to eat and how much that impacts our individual health. I mean, it impacts us directly and indirectly in all aspects. So directly, we know that our diet, what foods we choose, impact our risk of getting diabetes and heart disease. Yeah. But we also know indirectly, in a way, the foods that we choose impact whether we get that cold or flu or pneumonia. Because if we're not getting nutrient dense foods, then we're going to be deficient in many of those nutrients that are critical for our immune system to work well. I always talk about zinc. Zinc is such a phenomenal nutrient that's in so many great foods, our animal protein, our nuts and seeds. And but if we're getting too many of those refined and processed foods, if we're filling up on empty calories or calories that are not as nutritionally dense. For example, people are filling up on sugary coffee drinks or soda or muffins or toast, right? Those foods that are not as nutritionally dense as, let's say, brown rice and salmon or oysters or our broccoli. Then what happens is that we become nutritionally insufficient, and that can lead to a whole host of issues, including, whether we get the common cold more often or we get more serious issues like heart disease and dementia and diabetes. So I think it impacts everything in some way.
You've said some buzzwords there already, and one I want to just circle back to, and that is the immune system. I think all of us know that our immune system impacts, whether we get a cold or other infectious diseases, but it's much broader than that too. I understand that you are a breast cancer survivor, and although the immune system is not the only factor in cancer, it certainly plays a role. So can you just maybe talk about that connection, what you learned through your own journey and how all this is connected?
Yeah, in fact, I am a 20-year survivor or thriver.
Congratulations.
Right? I know, it's crazy. I was 30 and young, in the middle of my residency training. And so that really, getting ill like that at such a young age without having any family history and thinking I was like the healthy one. I was so interested in nutrition and exercise, and I was trying to take really good care of myself. It's really threw me for a loop, and it was definitely a challenge, but it took me into this path of thinking about health and disease and wellness in a whole different way. And that's when I started to learn about functional medicine, which was really instrumental in my training and really helps me a lot with all my patients. Because what we do in functional medicine is we treat each person as an individual and look for their underlying risk factors for the disease they're coming to see us with, or their imbalances in their body that's resulting in their body not working at its optimal place. So we know that food and nutrition impact our risk of cancer. Absolutely. It impacts risk of breast cancer so many times, and we can talk more about that. For me, there were many other things that influenced my risk of cancer, and we know that there are many times multiple hits that influence whether a cell becomes cancerous and then becomes invasive. And so we want to look at that individual person, right? As from everything from how they manage stress in their life, are they resting enough, are they getting enough sleep, to are there imbalances in their microbiome. We're learning so much about how that impacts everything from metabolism of hormones to the immune system, right? And then to how the person is handling toxins from the environment. So we look at all aspects of that person's health.
And I'm so glad you brought that up. I often say that most of the time it's all of the above, that we often talk about spirituality in these programs, and it's not a prayer fixes everything, or it's not you change your diet and that does everything. It's our emotions, it's our relationships, it's the way we bring ourselves to the world, and the way we, like you mentioned, handle stress. All of those things are interconnected.
Absolutely. Yes, brilliantly said. And important to look and focus on all of those things when we're working to get whole and well. And I am a huge believer in nutrition, and I always talk to people about the power of food and using food as medicine. Yeah. But I also appreciate that, food is connection with others, and food should be for enjoyment and
True.
and and relaxation and family. And we've got to appreciate all aspects of that and how that influences
So
our
when
health.
it comes, yeah, exactly. When it comes to cancer, and maybe specifically breast cancer, we have a lot of women in our audience, and that is in the short list of fears that many women wrestle with,
Yes.
whether or not they have a family member. So specifically talking about food as medicine, talk a bit about your perspective on what it is about nutrition and diet that can impact, not that it's the only factor, but an important one, and how that impacts a woman's risk for breast cancer.
The research is so deep in the area of sugar, right? And refined carbohydrates. So one of the first places we start is really pulling back on all those added sugars in the diet. And they sneak in in many different, I know it's crazy, even in crackers, there's added sugar, and cereals, there's added sugar. And of course, sodas and juices and coffee drinks. And so we really work to dial back. And I always work with people to say, okay, pull out anything with added sugar in it. Pull out, especially, a lot of those refined carbohydrates, things with refined flours in it. Go more toward whole foods. Get your carbohydrates more from your vegetables and your fruits, and avoid a lot of those refined and processed foods, which have become such a staple of the American diet and is causing a lot of ill health. So that's the first place we start. Yeah.
And Dr. Boehm, I'm aware of some research just within the last year or two that baked goods like, croissants or muffins or, baked desserts are terrible and almost as bad as some of the really horrible other foods that we think of, but what they do in the body is really bad. And you can tie intake of those kinds of refined flour foods to disease and death rates and all of that.
Absolutely, right. We think, oh, cereal for breakfast, right? But
yeah.
that causes this, most cereals cause this spike in blood sugar. And when the blood sugar goes up, then the body responds by producing a lot of insulin. Insulin is that hormone that takes the food and gets it into the cells for energy. But that high level of insulin causes us to gain weight. It causes us to gain weight around the belly, especially, belly fat, that increasing that waist circumference is because of that spike in insulin. So you want to do whatever you can to avoid that spike in insulin. So most of the time we're saying, stay away from those cereals for breakfast, even if they are, some of the healthier, what are perceived as the healthier ones, right? So even oatmeal, right? And even if it's the steel cut and you add a lot of protein to it, maybe, but a lot of those foods just spike your blood sugar. So what I always recommend is people think about ways to not spike the blood sugar, keep the blood sugar more stable. So that means that every meal you want to think about a good protein source, a good fiber source, and a healthy fat source. And what those two foods do is they slow the digestion and absorption of your food, and they prevent as much of a blood sugar spike, so you don't have that spike in insulin. So again, that insulin spike has been tied with heart disease and diabetes and dementia and cancer. So you want to prevent that blood sugar spike by balancing your blood sugar. And that's probably the first place I always start with people. Is pulling.
And you're saying that
yeah.
And you're saying that those refined carbs may potentially even have an impact on cancer risk because of the immune system.
Absolutely. So it's been well studied, especially with breast cancer, prostate cancer, lung, colon, that elevations in blood sugar, elevations in insulin can trigger and has been tied in with the growth of those cancers. And so that's a really important aspect to focus on, is preventing those, making your blood sugar more balanced. Lots and lots of fiber. You get your fiber from your vegetables, ground flaxseed, nuts and seeds, beans and legumes, having some at every meal, some fiber, some good healthy fat, like your avocado, coconut oils, and then having some good protein at every meal and balancing your blood sugar that way. Your protein is, again, your nuts and seeds, beans and legumes, fish, chicken, eggs. And so that's how you can balance your blood sugar. And then there's some really great foods that have been associated with health and decreasing some of those things that can impact cancer risk, such as the cruciferous vegetables. I love cruciferous vegetables. That's your broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts. And you want to try to incorporate one serving of those into your meals every day, because they have these phytonutrients in them called glucosinolates, which give those vegetables its bitter taste. But it also, those glucosinolates have a lot of great benefits for our health. They can really help with estrogen metabolism, making hormones less carcinogenic in the body. They can help with detoxification. So if you do get exposed to some toxins, they help with eliminating them from the body. So I love cruciferous vegetables. Those are some of my favorite things to add in.
What do you say to somebody who didn't grow up eating many vegetables at all and doesn't like them? Any suggestions?
Oh, that's a great question, because we're really always asking people to get almost, 7 to 10 servings of vegetables and fruits in their daily diet.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. And so great ways you can get them in: making soups. So you throw in a bunch of vegetables in the soup. And then for some people, if they blend the soup, then they like it even better. So getting vegetables in soups that way is a wonderful way. Cooking vegetables sometimes helps with the palatability for some people. They like them better when they're cooked than when they're raw. But sometimes if it's overcooked, they don't taste as good. So experimenting and throwing them into stews and soups is a great way to slowly increase the amount of vegetables in your diet.
And Dr. Bohem, I have also seen some research within the last couple of years that the risk of deaths from obesity in this country are meeting or perhaps even surpassing deaths from smoking tobacco. This whole area of being overweight. I know there's all the emotional factors involved too. Switching maybe to talk a bit about that for a minute. How do you help your patients really make progress in dealing with their weight?
Yeah, I think that thing the area we were just speaking about, the area of balancing your blood sugar, is a really great place to start. Because a lot of times when we have, let's say somebody comes in and they're having pancakes and orange juice for breakfast, right? They get this blood sugars, or maybe a muffin and orange juice. They get a spike in their blood sugar. The body then produces a ton of insulin. And we talked about how that causes us to gain weight. But what also happens is then the blood sugar will drop, and you'll feel tired. You might get a headache. You feel sluggish. And then you go, well, maybe I need to eat something again. And so unfortunately, these refined carbohydrates will encourage us to be snacking more frequently and reaching for more foods. So just by cleaning up the diet and pulling out those refined carbohydrates, it really makes a big difference. And a lot of times we start to see those cravings go away. People are craving the simple sugars, the refined carbs, because of that cycle that's going on. And when you pull them away, then people start to have more balanced blood sugar. They feel better. They have more energy. And they're not reaching for those foods as frequently. It makes a huge difference really quickly. Another thing that's been studied to show it helps with weight is green tea. Green tea has these phenomenal anti-inflammatory properties, has been associated with maintaining a better weight, and kind of ties in with the whole breast wellness aspect of things, right? Because it's also been the EGCG, the phytonutrient in green tea, has also been shown to decrease risk of breast cancer. So I always encourage people to, get some green tea in every day. 2 to 4 cups a day can help in all of those areas.
I actually like green tea. I didn't grow up drinking tea at all, but a few years ago, I just tried it out. I personally, use it with just a tiny bit of honey. And you talked about sugar, and we certainly want to be careful about that. But I have actually learned to really enjoy green tea, and most days I have now made it part of my routine. So I'm really grateful that you said that. On this whole sugar thing, let me bring up a controversial area, and that is one about artificial sweeteners. Since you're talking about sugar craving, and we're talking about weight and whatever, some people think, oh, if I just switch from soda to diet soda, I'm doing better. What do you think?
Well, unfortunately, there's been a lot of research recently that has shown that not to be true. In fact, they've shown that artificial sweeteners, as well as artificially sweetened sodas, in addition to regular sodas, will increase risk of diabetes and heart disease. So switching from a regular soda to a diet soda in much of the research is not showing improvement in heart disease, diabetes, and even weight. People think, oh, I'm going to go with diet and I'm going to lose weight. And so it's a very interesting topic. And we don't have all the research. I don't think it's all been figured out as to why that is. There's multiple things going on, from maybe you still have that sweet taste, so you'll reach for other sweet things, or it may be impacting the microbiome, the bugs in our gut that's impacting our metabolism. There's sweet receptors actually in the digestive system, and there's been some research looking at, well maybe the artificial sweeteners are triggering this insulin, and that's what's resulting in them not being beneficial to our health. So I always say to people, you want to get off of both the sugar, the added sugar, and the artificial sweeteners, and really just wean them out of your diet. Some people have to wean down; they've gotten really used to them, or just cut them out of your diet. Get them out of your diet, because it usually helps in the long run. It really helps people's cravings, and then it helps their health, of course.
I'm glad you mentioned again about cravings. And I have seen some of that data that removing all sweeteners can actually change your cravings. And the artificial sweeteners you alluded to may potentially heighten that. So you can get past that. Yeah, there may be a bit of a hump, but I certainly encourage people to do that. And I'm glad you do too.
Yeah, sometimes that first week or two is a little tough. People might get a little cranky, and they'll really want to have some. But then after that second week, most of the time those cravings go away, and people are amazed. They're amazed. They're like, I never thought I could have stopped my diet soda intake. And it's just amazing. Yeah.
Another area that I'd like to address, Dr. Boeheim, is that of inflammation. And when people think of inflammation, they think of, joint pain or arthritis, and that certainly is true. But that area of inflammation impacts so many disease states. Again, largely through the immune system's, impact. First of all, just a word or two about how big that inflammation issue is in our physical health in all kinds of areas, and then how nutrition can impact that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, inflammation has been tied to every disease process in the body. So it is huge, and it's something we have to pay attention to. We know that acute inflammation is really important, right? So let's say you twist your ankle and your ankle swells. That inflammatory process is really necessary for the body to heal, and that's okay. We're not worried about that. What we're really worried about is the chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation can show up as you mentioned, joint stiffness. For somebody else, it may be just swelling in their body or fluid retention. For somebody else with chronic inflammation, they may have asthma or digestive issues. It's important that we pay attention to inflammation and see what we can do to lower it, because as I said, it's been tied to every disease process there is. And we've known about this for years. This is not new, right? We have all the research that looks at gingivitis, right? The inflamed.
Exactly.
Yep. When the gums are inflamed, that has been linked to heart disease. And there's this chronic inflammation in the gums, often caused by this imbalance in the bacteria in the mouth that has been linked to whether or not somebody goes on and has a heart attack. And so people are like, what? My teeth and my gums are related to whether I get a heart attack, right? So it's very important. And that's one of the things in functional medicine we're always doing, is looking to get a full history with somebody and looking at how all the different systems in their body are interrelated, because that really influences what's going on and the diseases that are going on in their body. So we always look for hidden infection. Hidden infection is one of those things, like gingivitis, like gum disease, that is tied with inflammation in the body and other illnesses. We also pay attention to the diet. I mean, we'll go back to food as medicine, right? So we know that certain foods are more inflammatory than others. And they've shown that inflammation in our body can shift very quickly. So let's say we eat a meal that's, full of refined and processed foods and some junk foods and not the best quality meats. They can show that there's inflammatory markers that go up very soon after eating that meal, versus if you have a more whole foods meal with a lot of vegetables and lots of fiber and protein, like we were talking about before, a lot of broccoli, brown rice, mushrooms, and salmon, let's say, right? The inflammation in your body doesn't go up as much after you eat the meal. And that's actually true with spices too. Interesting research looking at when there's a lot of spices added to your food, there's less of that inflammatory spike after the meal. So food has a huge impact on inflammation. We always talk about those omega-3 fats, right? The omega-3 fats that are found in fish oil, ground flaxseed, walnuts, those omega-3 fats are very anti-inflammatory. But unfortunately, so many people aren't getting enough of those omega-3 fats in their diet anymore. In fact, we do a test all the time in our office. It's called the Omega Quant. It's just a finger prick, and it can measure the amount of omega-3s in the red blood cell membrane. And you want to have about 8% of the fat be from the omega-3s. And most people I test, and even people that are taking some fish oil, their levels are low. And that's just because it's just hard to get enough in your diet. And so when you're looking to lower inflammation, we talk a lot about those high-fat fish, sardines, wild-caught salmon, the ground flaxseed again, walnuts, things that are rich in omega-3s to help with decreasing inflammation in the body.
Thank you for mentioning omega-3s, and we could do a whole nother program on supplements, but just a real quick question. Do you recommend that people struggling with some of these conditions, especially related to inflammation, take omega-3s as a supplement?
Yeah, I mean, it is one of the supplements that I give most frequently. I mean, when I'm looking to supplement somebody's diet, of course, we always go with food first. But if we need to supplement, we're always looking for higher quality supplements, ones that are made without added toxins. And so I think that's an important thing to pay attention to. But it is one of the most frequent supplements I end up using, just because so many people have high levels of inflammation and we're working to lower them.
Now, another big area that I know many of our viewers and listeners wrestle with, and that is mental and emotional well-being. Frankly, tsunami of mental health issues and anxiety and depression and so on. And certainly, again, this is another one where it's all of the above. Our environment, our relationships make a difference. But what can you tell us about how food, how nutrition impacts our mental functioning, our emotional well-being?
Yeah. I was reading an article, a research article the other day, talking about tryptophan. And tryptophan is the protein, it's the amino acid. So amino acids are the building blocks of protein. And one of those protein amino acids is called tryptophan. And tryptophan in the body goes on to make serotonin, which is the feel-good neurotransmitter, right? It makes us feel happy, makes us feel more calm. And this research article was looking at how even in one meal, if you have a meal that's deficient in tryptophan, the subjects will feel more sad, have more depression that rest of that day, right after that meal, which is kind of phenomenal. Again, talking about the power of each meal, every meal that we're choosing, how it impacts our health, right? It's a long-term impact, but there's also short-term impacts. So you think about, okay, I should have tryptophan, some food that's rich in tryptophan at every meal. And that's, again, why you want to choose nutrient-dense foods. If you're reaching for refined and processed, quick, fast foods that are nutrient poor, you're going to miss some of these really important nutrients that impact your health. So foods that are rich in tryptophan, really, they're mostly the protein-rich foods. So everything from chicken and poultry, we always think of that, right? Because when people have turkey at Thanksgiving, they want to go to sleep. It's some of that is associated, well, there's lots of reasons, but some of that is associated with the high tryptophan in turkey because it's serotonin helps us with resting and sleeping. So poultry, chicken, turkey, but beef, eggs, beans and legumes, nuts and seeds, there are a lot of these rich tryptophan foods, and you want to have some again at every meal because it helps you feel better. It's going to balance that blood sugar, help with those ups and downs in mood and energy, and that helps us just feel better. I'm always amazed with mood, how much people's mood changes just with cleaning up the diet. I work at the Ultra Wellness Center in Lenox, Massachusetts, and we have nutritionists. We have like 4 nutritionists. So even though my background's all in nutrition, everybody who comes in also sees a nutritionist, which is phenomenal because they really just help people implement these changes we're asking them to make. And I'm always amazed at even before that first follow-up, when they've just really been focusing on cleaning up their diet, balancing their blood sugar, getting a good source of protein at each meal, that healthy fiber, right? And healthy fats, those omega-3 fats, they often, many times mood is just so much better right away. Energy and mood, it's pretty amazing sometimes.
You've alluded to the blood sugar swings as being a factor in mental emotional wellness as well. And those spikes and then the crash, certainly that has to have an impact. So the simple carbohydrates can really do a number on your mood swings.
Yeah. So, so often, people are like, okay, practically, how do I do that? And everybody's different in terms of the amount of carbohydrates they need, right? It depends on how old they are, how active they are. So younger people typically are getting more calories and more carbohydrates, and that could be okay. But in general, what I'll tell people to do is remove anything with simple sugar, right? Mm-hmm. Added sugars, and then remove anything with added flour, right? If you take a grain and turn it into a flour, then that can cause a spike in blood sugar. So that would be your cookies, crackers, breads, all of the muffins, pancakes, like we've spoken about. Just remove them for a while. Get your carbohydrates more from your vegetables, and that's really, and see how you feel. It's pretty phenomenal.
A kind of addendum to the whole mental issue is also the epidemic of dementia as our population ages. And we could probably talk again a long time about that, but I know you believe that nutrition has an impact on our risk of dementia in older age as well.
Yeah, so how we call adult onset diabetes, even though now we're seeing that type of diabetes in our kids, unfortunately, that's called type 2 diabetes, right? The diabetes of insulin resistance, and we were speaking about earlier. Well, we're labeling dementia as a type 3 diabetes because we recognize, that we're recognizing how much our refined carbohydrate diet, this insulin resistance that we were talking about, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but that insulin spikes how much that's tied in with our memory and our cognition. So it all ties into this same area as well. So when we say that term insulin resistance, when people are choosing diets that spike their blood sugar and then their insulin spikes, if they do that a lot over time, their insulin gets tired. That hormone that takes the food into the muscles for energy gets tired, and our body becomes resistant to it. And that's called insulin resistance, which is a pre-diabetic type of a situation. And that's been tied with dementia as well, which is interesting. So people can have a huge impact on their cognition and their memory, just again, by cleaning up the diet. It's a great first place to start.
Yeah. And as we bring this conversation to a close, let's try and make this really simple. And you've kind of answered this, but I just like to make it 1, 2, 3. Dr. Boham, maybe you could leave us with the top 2 or 3 things. If somebody does feel overwhelmed, they haven't been paying a lot of attention to their diet, or they've just been reading everything and feel like, where do I start? What do I do first? If maybe we can just close with the top 2 or 3 things that you would suggest somebody, actions they would take to improve their diet and use their food as medicine.
Absolutely. So really, one of the best places to start is just pull out foods that have labels on them. So go to Whole Foods, avoid foods that come in packages with labels on it. And, because most of those foods have added sugar and refined carbohydrates. So just go Whole Foods. Anything with added sugar, most of the time, get rid of, right? I mean, every once in a while you might have a piece of dark chocolate, but we're talking about most of the time, remove those foods. And then the second thing I'd say is increase your vegetables. Most Americans were way deficient in our vegetable intake. And you really want to be getting 5 to 7 servings of just vegetables a day, right? We were saying that 7 to 10 of fruits and vegetables, but 5 to 7 servings of vegetables a day. And a serving is considered a cup of leafy greens or like a half a cup of cooked vegetables. So get in those 5 to 7 servings of vegetables a day, sneak them in, get them in your omelet in the morning, your soup at lunch, you'll be surprised. It takes some time, but you can get them in and go more toward whole foods. Those would be my top 2.
I have been so happy at the things that you've shared. And I just want to close by emphasizing that for our viewers and our listeners, you will feel better. This is about your risk of disease in the future, but it's also about feeling better right now. And I know that's a big part of what you deal with in functional medicine, Dr. Boham.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It has been such an honor and a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carol. It's been great being with you.
So now, after listening to that conversation, how do you feel about what you had for breakfast this morning or what you had for dinner last night? I hope that this has helped you see some very practical ways that you can make some changes in the way you eat and both feel better and be healthier. I know it's stretched me in some ways specifically, even though I have had a relatively healthy diet for many years. But this conversation helped me help stretch my understanding in areas such as, blood sugar and inflammation especially. Now, if this was intriguing for you, this is the quality of information that you get every week as a member of the Fully Alive Group online community. I would invite you to come and join us. Go to fullyalivegroup.com, and if you become a member, you not only get access to our videos going forward each week, but you can go back and look at all our previous online video sessions, the question and answer sessions, the guest experts like Dr. Elizabeth Boham, the teachings from me. You get access to all our previous sessions as well. And I would invite you to do that. Now, one more goodie. Dr. Elizabeth Boham has a promo code for you to get some of her material. As a guest for listening on this podcast, make note of this promo code, Breast30 Wellness. If you go to her website, drboham.com, and you are interested in her DVD on breast health that she herself developed after she went through breast cancer, the things that she learned and what she teaches to her patients about maintaining breast health, paying attention to nutrition and other things, the toxins in our environment, what kind of screening, supplements, all of that related to breast health, that's on that DVD. So drboham.com, and for her breast wellness DVD, use the promo code BREAST30WELLNESS and get 30% off. So what a great offer Dr. Boham is giving to you as our podcast listeners. She also has a free ebook that you can download that has some of that same information. And then again, fullyalivegroup.com. I would love you to join us in that online community and get access to video teachings like this every week, as well as live question and answer sessions, opportunity if you choose to connect with other group members, downloadable tip sheets, and a whole lot more. So come check that out. And now, thank you again for being part of our podcast family. I would love to hear from you. And until next time, may God bless you.
Thank you for listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol. Our purpose is to provide trustworthy resources that help you and others live fully alive in every way as God intended. If you would like to help others experience transformation in their lives and relationships, we invite you to partner with us. Text the word GIVE, that's GIVE, to the number 512-980-1620, or visit our website at drcarolministries.com/donate to make a one-time contribution or monthly gift. Your financial support allows us to expand our message and to help others. Thank you so much, and may God bless you.